Excellence, The Center, with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out at SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. And last night, about 24 hours ago, I did a program on the assault on the U.S. Constitution. My goal was to cover the assaults on amendments on the Bill of Rights, amendments 1, 2, and 4 that are currently ongoing. And basically, we ran over time. So that's why I'm doing part 2. I was going to say part 2 the next week, but then somebody's like, why don't you just do it now? And, once I thought about it and started going through the information, I was like, hey, why don't I do it now? So that's why we're here tonight. So again, this is part 2. Part 1 was last night, and we only covered the assault on the First Amendment, which of course has different sections. So it covers freedom of religion, assembly, speech, and that none of these things will be abridged, right? So it's different sections to that. Tonight, I'll bring it up. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. Last night, we literally spent 2 hours dealing with the First Amendment because the ramifications of some bills that Congress had passed. Tonight, we're going to be dealing some with Congress, but also with the judiciary. So, before I get started, get everything up and running. First of all, let me say, BB Foday, brother, you got ripped off. BB Foday, straight Black Pride, brother Elijah. BB Foday, straight Black Pride, brother Kevin. And BB Foday, straight Black Pride, the sister Farnessa. You know what I'm gonna say? If y'all can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. Seem to be having some internet lag for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm trying to rectify that situation as we speak. And let's see. I don't know what music I'm going with tonight. Let's see. All right, I guess we'll go with that. Then y'all let me know about the music volume, and we will commence shortly. Was kind of expecting more people since I did show people on Instagram this morning. I know I didn't mention it yesterday because I didn't make up my mind truly till I woke up this morning. Y'all gotta forgive me. The day's been overcast, kind of rainy, drizzly, cool, and I've just been lethargic. Like I haven't had any energy at all. It's crazy. Also, send your thoughts out to our producer, Cindy Ashby. She's having a medical procedure upcoming, and once she's clear of that and feeling stronger, I'm going to have her on the show to talk about the founder of On the Wake Up Radio and trials and tribulations of trying to establish something for our people. It's been a lot of ups and downs with that. So with that, because I only plan to be here for the goals to be out of here after an hour and a half. Let me get started, even though I feel like I'm missing something. But whatever it is, it's going to be missing. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to where we were with the Bill of Rights, and we're going to do a quick review of what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, went over the First Amendment, said the First Amendment was under assault. We talked about the passing of HR 6090 and HR 7021, and how those bills in the House are taking the definitions from, in essence, foreign powers and imposing them on United States citizens. So for those who have forgotten or unfamiliar with the Bill of Rights, Amendment 1 states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So, I mean, we've seen all of this be attacked. We talked about how the anti-Semitism definition is really a undercover, low-key attack on Christianity and the Bible. We talked about the abridgment of the freedom of speech by not being able to say certain things because of the anti-Semitism bill. The press just been in the pocket of certain people for a long time. That's going by the wayside. And the right of people peaceably to assemble. We've seen Congress here. They're about to bring hearings up and bring the mayor of DC up to the Capitol to ask her why she hasn't ordered the dispersal of protesters at George Washington University. So again, those people are peaceably assembling, and the Congress is asking, why are you allowing people to peacefully assemble? I mean, those are the times we live in. We live in strange times. Also, I heard, and this just keep you all abreast of what's going on. Once I see what happens with it, I may do a video on it. But from what I saw on the news, Hamas has agreed to a ceasefire. I haven't heard any word of Israel agreeing to that agreement. So that's what's happening in international news. And so that's that. So that was yesterday. We talked about the First Amendment. Today we're going to talk about the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. And so let's read. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, many people seem to argue, the argument seems to be that because the first part says a well-regulated militia being necessary to a free state, people argue that means that the militia should be regulated by the government. Others contend that that's false. The militia is made up of the people and thus is regulated by the people, and the people having the ability to keep and bear arms is actually what allows the democratic republic or the democracy, or however you want to say it, to thrive. In other words, an unarmed people, P. Newton said this, I'm paraphrasing because I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember it totally. An unarmed people are slaves or are subject to be slaves at any time. That's what Huey P. Newton said, right? So he's in agreement, obviously, with the Second Amendment. And that was his observation about history is whenever the people are unarmed, you're already halfway down the road to enslavement. And the founding fathers agreed with that, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go, speaking of Huey P. Newton, I've got all about this. We're going to go back, right? Because yesterday I was talking about the concept of the canary in the coal mine. Talking about how black people are the canary in the coal mine and how things are done to black people and no one cares, right? But then when the things are done to other people, then everybody looks around like, oh my God, how can they allow this to happen? How can the government do this, that, or third? Well, I mean, they've been doing it. They just wasn't doing it to you. They were doing it to black people, or maybe they did it to the Native Americans or whoever, or maybe they did Native Americans and black people. But the vast majority of people weren't affected, and thus they did not, pay any attention. This is how this works. So we're going to give an example of that in regards to the Second Amendment. We're going to go back in time, check out this article, and it says, wait a minute, come on now. Get on now. And this is from history.com. This is the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And I thought the articles, okay. Yeah, the NRA supported gun control when the Black Panthers had the weapons. Back in the 1960s, even the NRA supported gun control to disarm the group. Now, somebody's going to ask me, brother, what do this have to do with my rights right now? I wasn't born in the 60s, and neither was I. And somebody's gonna say, I wasn't even born this century. Okay. I mean, they wasn't born last century. I was born last century. So, hey, it is what it is. So, the reason we're gonna talk about it is because this history shows us how we got here. Now, let's take a look at it. It says, with each passing day, the debate for or against gun control rages on within the United States. And although the National Rifle Association currently leads the charge for the rights of citizens to carry arms of all types with little to no interference from the government, the original gun rights advocates to take the stance were the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Throughout the late 1960s, starting in October 1966, the party was founded. The militant Black nationalist group used their understanding of the finer details of California's gun laws to underscore their political statements about the subjugation of Black people in America. In 1967, 30 members of the Black Panther Party protested on the steps of the California State House armed with .357 Magnums, 12-gauge shotguns, 45 caliber pistols, and announced the time has come for Black people to arm themselves. The display so frightened politicians, including California Governor Ronald Reagan, who was there at the time and ran away, that helped to pass the Mulford Act, a state bill prohibiting the open carry of loaded firearms, along with an addendum prohibiting loaded firearms in the state capitol. In 1967, the 1967 bill took California down the path to having some of the strictest gun laws in America and helped jumpstart a surge of national gun control restrictions. Stop right there. This is a perfect example of how it works. I'm speaking to Americans here. I don't care if you are Hispanic, Black, white, Asian, Arab, you're from the continent, you're African, Caribbean, wherever you're from. This is how America works. Black people fight for a right. Black people get subjugated. Eventually, everybody gets written into the law that was supposed to help Black people. Other people benefit. But the other thing that happens is Black people get subjugated. Black people fight for a right. The people say, "Oh, we can't give them that right." So black people get punished, and then eventually they say, "Hey, this is working so well. Let's punish everybody for this." And then before you know it, you're sitting around trying to figure out, "Hey, what happened to our rights?" Well, what happened is it started by subjugating black people, and they just moved along to everybody else. This is how this works. But see, no one else is going to tell you that, because no one else studies the history like that. All right, let's move forward. The law was part of a wave of laws that passed in the late 1960s regulating guns, especially to target African Americans, says Adam Winkler, author of Gunfight, the Battle Over the Right to Bear Arms, including the Gun Control Act of 1968, which adopted new laws prohibiting certain people from owning guns, providing for beefed up licensing and inspection of gun dealers, and restricting the importation of cheap Saturday night specials, pocket pistols, that were popular in some urban communities. In contrast to the NRA's rigid opposition to gun control in today's America, the organization fought alongside the government for stricter gun regulation in the 1960s. This was part of an effort to keep guns out of the hands of African Americans as racial tensions in the nation grew. The NRA felt especially threatened by the Black Panther Party, whose well-photographed carrying of weapons in public spaces was entirely legal in the state of California, where the party originated. See, we have a picture here of the Panther Party in the corridor of the Capitol in Sacramento. The Black Panthers were, quote-unquote, innovators in the way they viewed the Second Amendment at the time, says Winkler. Rather than focus on the idea of self-defense in the home, the Black Panthers brazenly took their weapons to the streets, where they felt the public, particularly African Americans, needed protection from a corrupt government. Let's stop right there. I think we can make the argument that right now, not just black people, but Americans could use protection from a corrupt government. Peace, Brother Dawood. Good to see you, good brother. Now, these ideas eventually infiltrated into the NRA to shape the modern gun debate, explains Winkler. As gun control laws swept the nation, the organization adopted a similar stance to that of the activist group they once fought to regulate, with support for open carry laws and concealed weapon laws high on their agenda. Few aspects of the United States Constitution have been as murky and divisive as... Oh, we got a whole... Hold on. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but that video just played automatically and just started rolling. So, yeah, my apologies for that. Few aspects of the United States Constitution have been as murky and divisive as the Second Amendment. The amendment states a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. While some view the amendment to mean American citizens have an inalienable right to arms, that's what I think. Focusing on the right to bear arms, others take it to mean that only a well-regulated militia would have that undeniable right, with the emphasis on well-regulated and militia. The Black Panthers would find themselves in the middle of both interpretations. Now, you can make the argument that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was indeed a militia and was well regulated by the black community. But I'm sure that people didn't agree with that at the time. Originally called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, the radical African American group was formed in 1966 in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, based on the ideology of the late Minister Malcolm X. They believed that the fight for racial equality would not be won by a slow drip of nonviolent actions and protests, as Martin Luther King Jr. preached, but that stronger actions were required to ensure black people's survival. Let's stop right there. The reason I want to stop right there is because understanding the time and understanding the difference between fighting against oppression and fighting against extinction, that has been a very, very big stumbling block in our community. So I'm gonna tell y'all a story right quick, if I can. Greetings to Brother Tony. Before I met Brother Genie, right, I saw like some video, some like YouTube clips or whatever, but I hadn't met him. And I was part of this Black Studies class. And brother brought in his genocide lecture, right? Now, if you haven't seen his genocide lecture, it's still worth it today. And so we sat down and we watched it as a group. And I was sitting there and I was like, yo, I'm sitting here thinking that we fighting the same fight, and I'm just getting back into the movement, you know. And I realized at that moment, no, we're not fighting against oppression or fighting for rights or equality or any of that stuff. Not that I was, big fighting for equality thing, but I'm saying, all of them things. I said, we are fighting for Black survival, right? That's right, brother. Anti-extinctionist. That's the moment I became an anti-extinctionist, right there. Because the idea that, one, we could be removed from the planet, and two, that people would put maximum effort into it hadn't occurred to me. But after I watched that video, say without question, I realized the difference between these two fights, right? As the Panthers realized at that time. A large part of the group's campaign against racial injustice relied on gun ownership and training. Newton and Seal began collecting a variety of guns during the early years of the Panthers, including machine guns, rifles, and handguns. New recruits were required to learn how to wield, clean, and shoot guns, in addition to understanding their right to carry firearms and how to communicate that right to police in California. Newton put his own knowledge of the law to the test after he and Seal were stopped by Oakland police officers in early 1967 in a vehicle filled with weapons. When questioned about the guns, Newton simply replied that the only thing he was obliged to do was give his identification, name, and address. At the request of the officer, Newton stepped out of the car. Now hold up, this part is not correct. If this is the incident I think it is, Bobby was not with Huey that night. I'm 99% sure. But anyway, let's move forward. Stepped out the car, rifle in tow, and refused to explain why he and the other Black Panthers were carrying their weapons. As onlookers gathered, the police tried to disperse the crowd while Newton welcomed them. He knew that under California law. Okay, different. All right, my bad. This is a different situation. Since there were no violations for the police to charge the Black Panthers members with, and a growing pack of witnesses, they were able to leave the scene without any trouble from law enforcement. Okay, yeah. All right, my bad. I jumped ahead and was wrong. Emboldened by that calm exchange with the police, members of the group began to follow police cars and dispense legal advice to African Americans who were stopped by the police while legally carrying their weapons. The group referred to these activities as police patrols. Bobby Seale and Huey Newton used the Second Amendment to justify carrying guns in public to police the police. The Panthers would stand to the sidelines with their guns, shouting out instructions to the person. Told them they had the right to remain silent, that they were watching, that if anything bad happened, that the Panthers would be there to protect them. They also organized a march to the Capitol to draw attention to their cause of fighting against the government that sought to infringe on their right to bear arms. On May 2nd, which, wow, the anniversary is 4 days ago. May 2nd, 1967, 30 fully armed Panthers occupied the Capitol, the California State Capitol. The demonstration was motivated by Republican Assemblyman Don Moffett's bill to repeal the law allowing Californians to openly carry weapons, a direct response to the Black Panthers police patrols. Before entering the building, Bobby Seale read a statement on the Capitol steps in front of Governor Ronald Reagan. The American people in particular and black people, the American people in general and black people in particular, Seale declared, must take careful note of the racist California legislator aimed at keeping the black people disarmed and powerless. The group of activists occupying the Capitol with fully loaded weapons on full display was an unforgettable sight. However, their demonstration backfired, and the bill passed both the state assembly and the Senate, carrying support with the NRA. In addition to repealing open carry laws in California, Mulford made it illegal to carry firearms into the Capitol. On July 28th, it was signed into law by then Governor Ronald Reagan, who later commented that he saw no reason why on the street today a citizen should be really this advertisement just jump up here for no reason, should be allowed to carry a weapon. Now, that is that, right? That's the history. And most of us here knew the history. But I just wanted to read this as a reminder. Now, they say that the action backfired, but I disagree. The action exposed the hypocrisy of the government. Because, let's be honest, they were going to vote for that anyway. If not at that time, then at some other time. So it's not like, let's be honest, it's not like the bill wasn't going to get passed. But now, we've seen that. That's the historical Second Amendment. You're like, all right, DC, that was 50, 60 years ago, whatever, bro. What that got to do with anything? Well, the more things change, the more they did not. Check it out. New York man faces legal battle over building firearms. And let us read. It says Dexter Taylor, a 52-year-old software engineer from New York, finds himself embroiled in a legal dispute with the state of New York after pursuing gun manufacturing as a hobby and potential business venture. Taylor's journey took a drastic turn when he was arrested by a joint SWAT ATF task force at his home, leading to a week-long stint in jail in Rikers Island. The arrest followed an indictment by the Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez, accusing Taylor of purchasing gun parts online to assemble untraceable firearms, commonly referred to ghost guns. Now let's stop right here. This will really link into our Fourth Amendment discussion as well, right? So here's the thing. The brother was buying parts to assemble guns, but he was not selling them. He didn't even carry them out his house. But some type of way they were monitoring him, and then they got a warrant, and as Dr. Collar would say, Black Boot stomped down his door and arrested him for exercising his Second Amendment right. He didn't sell the guns. He didn't walk outside with the guns. He didn't take the guns to the range. The guns literally never left his basement. And somehow this was deemed illegal. So as we speak, he's on trial. But of all the people in New York running around carrying guns, shooting up everything, and illegal aliens busting cops upside the head, and dudes slashing the throat of young women, and all this, they just going buck wild of it. People pushing people onto oncoming trains, and all that's going on. And they got a joint task force to kick in my man's door and smack him up and cart him off the Rikers. All right, let's get back to it. Now, Taylor, who maintains a clean criminal record and is not implicated in any violent offenses, now faces a 37-count indictment, including charges of criminal possession of a weapon, possession of a firearm, and unlawful possession of pistol ammunition, despite facing a potential sentence of 18 years in prison. Think about that. If he's convicted, he could face, he'll be 70 years old for making a hobby of assembling guns in his house. Taylor's legal representation, led by lawyer Vino Varghese, is challenging the constitutionality of New York's gun control laws, arguing that they infringe upon his Second Amendment rights. Varghese contends that Taylor's attempt to obtain a gun license in New York would have been futile, citing data showing a meager approval rate of such permits. This argument is further supported by the recent Supreme Court ruling in New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which deemed that the state's gun licensing scheme is unconstitutional. However, New York has responded by enacting even stricter firearm regulations, exacerbating the challenge faced by individuals seeking legal access to firearms. Taylor, a black conservative who, and I saw an interview with him, he says he is a conservative, but he does not support the current Republican Party. He did not specify why. Views his case as a civil rights issue and urges New York to uphold constitutional freedoms for all citizens. He emphasizes the importance of conservative support for urban communities and has initiated a fundraising campaign to finance his legal defense against the state. As Taylor's legal battle unfolds, it raises broader questions about the balance between individual liberties and state regulations, particularly in the realm of firearms. The outcome of this case could have significant implications for gun rights and legal precedent in New York and beyond. Right? Now, if that's not ridiculous enough, right? Because, I mean, having them folks come kick down your door when you're sitting there minding your business, just like, yo, what is happening right now? But I'm gonna make y'all mad because I got to show y'all who the judge is and what she said. Are y'all ready? All right. I'm gonna let y'all take a guess at who the judge is. Just put in, what gender and ethnicity y'all think the judge is. I'll give y'all a minute or so. While I ingest this coffee and try to get some juice. All right. Y'all ready? I've got a 7-second delay, so let me give y'all a few more seconds. Let's see. Hold on, my bad. Brother said Olivia Pope. TV show? That's which TV show is that, brother? That's the one where the sister was laid up with a white dude. Dessalines says palm colored. So we 50-50. All right. I think, brother, you got ripped off. I actually already looked this up. Or we may have talked about it. I don't know. Let me see. Scandal. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of the show. All right, let's take a look at it. This is your judge. And of course, this is Mr. Taylor. The judge is Abena Darke. I can't make this up, man. I did not make this up. No. Sister's name is Abena Darke. D-A-R-K-E-H. That is the judge in this case. Now, normally you would be like, oh man, all right, cool. I got a black judge. I think that, but look what she says. She says the Second Amendment doesn't exist here. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Your courts in the United States of America. Let's go back to the Bill of Rights to make sure I'm not tripping. Here we go. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the well-regulated militia is made up of the people. Thus, they are the ones that have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. This is Amendment 2 of the Constitution of the United States. But despite that fact, Mr. Taylor is facing 18 years, right? And he's facing 18 years because Miss Darkay, who you know she ain't grow up here or grow up in the South, because you couldn't survive the roasting that you would get by being named Miss Darkay if you grew up here in the United States. Like, you know, people nowadays would be committed suicide. So I'm just saying, this is our judge. Says New York man convicted over gunsmithing hobby after a judge says Second Amendment doesn't exist in this courtroom. Says Taylor was not suspected or charged with any violent offenses and has a clear criminal record. Nonetheless, he is facing 18 years in prison. His reward for his clean record was to have a SWAT team break down his door in the night. New York is trying to evade the Second Amendment and the Bruin decision by tightening regulations on gun possession. The matters currently stand is probably unconstitutional. But what makes this case remarkable is the ridiculous behavior of the judge, one Abana Darkay. The judge disrupted Barghesi's opening statement multiple times as he tried to set the stage for Taylor's defense. While the prosecution was allowed to depict Taylor as a dangerous individual, Judge Darkay blocked the lawyer from producing character witnesses. Wow, Judge Darkay led the jury to believe that they would face consequences if they did not vote to convict Taylor. He depicts Judge Darkay as the most aggressive prosecutor in the room, which that's not her job. She's not the prosecutor, she's the judge. She told us, do not bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. It doesn't exist here. So you can't argue Second Amendment. You can't argue Second Amendment. This is New York. And she went out of her way to limit me. Man, this is crazy. According to arrogant January 19, 2022, Hofstra University Law News posting, Honorable Abana Darkay reflects on how rich cultural experiences and stimulating work contribute to a well-lived life. It says Judge Darkay is a child of an immigrant father and first-generation mother. Her father was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa, which I figured that out. Her mother was born in Brooklyn. Okay. After her family moved from St. Vincent and Barbados. Okay. So, that's our judge. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring up this quick, well, it's not that quick, video of an interview with Mr. Taylor. So we can just hear him and his attorney during this interview.
Your career criminals run rampant, terrorizing innocent people, and what do the socialists and Democrats in charge do about it? Well, they catch and release, cashless bail, and laughable and insulting sentencing guidelines. Here are just some examples. Guy Rivera, a man with a felony rap sheet a mile long, is let out by Democrats and socialists, and he kills NYPD officer Jonathan Diller. Jose Ibarra, an illegal alien who had been previously arrested in New York City for abuse and endangerment of a child, was let out because, New York apparently doesn't care if criminals abuse children. And what does he do? He brutally murders Laken Riley in Georgia. But those who may be at home tinkering with guns as a hobby, well, that's when socialists throw the book at those folks in New York. And that's exactly what happened to our next guest. New York native and gun enthusiast Dexter Taylor joins us now along with his attorney, Vino Varghese. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Dexter, you first. Tell us your story. Talk to us about what happened to you.
Yes, sir. Very briefly, I'm a native New Yorker, software engineer, 30-year veteran of the IT industry, squeaky clean criminal record, never any problems with the police. Some years ago, I got into gunsmithing, and using legal parts I bought online, I manufactured first Glock pistols, then AR-style rifles in my basement workshop where I make all kinds of stuff, including my own furniture. In April of 2022, I was raided by a joint NYPD ATF task force. Basically, SWAT team broke my door down, took me off to Rikers, where I spent a week. My bail was almost $250,000, and now I'm on the line for 18 years if I lose my case. That's in New York City, as you said.
Goodness. Well, my understanding is it's legal for people, for Americans to make their own firearms as long as they're not selling them. Counselor, is there any doubt in your mind that the reason why your client is being singled out is because these socialists in New York don't like the Second Amendment to the Constitution, our right of self-defense? That's what they're choosing to make it, why they're making an example out of him, while letting career criminals out on the streets to kill NYPD officers and innocent women like Lake and Riley.
Well, Chris, the problem for Dexter is that he had the audacity to exercise his Second Amendment right to bear arms, or in his case, build guns in the privacy of his home. The DA, the state of New York, the Attorney General want to make an example out of him and put him away for years. The problem that they have is that his actions are legal under the Second Amendment, but New York State is thumbing its nose. They don't like the Second Amendment, and they've chosen to prosecute him and try to throw the book at him. We actually started trial today, and we picked a jury. It took us a little while to get a jury, and we started opening statements today, and already the system, the judge is putting her fingers on the scales of justice by interrupting my opening, when not interrupting the prosecutors. I mean, it's outrageous. But the system is rigged, and Dexter's my hero for standing up for his Second Amendment rights, fighting the system, and willing to sacrifice himself, go to state prison if he has to be able to get to federal court to challenge this in federal court.
Wow. Well, that's what socialists do, gentlemen, is they toss the Constitution right out the window. I've only got about 30 or 40 seconds for each of you to answer this next one. Dexter, on the Second Amendment issue, with the Democrats going pro-criminal, with the socialists going pro-criminal, isn't it unconscionable that they would seek to leave innocent Americans like yourself to the mercy of that criminal element that they unleashed onto the public?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm a politically homeless conservative, so I'm for neither major party. But it is ironic, grimly ironic, that Democrats tell people like me to be afraid of murderous white supremacists, but at the same time turn around and tell us that we should remain unarmed, and are willing to flout the Constitution to make that so.
Counselor, the first example of gun control in America was white Democrats trying to disarm blacks in America, and we all know it. So, Counselor, is that going to come up in trial, do you think?
Well, we're not. We've been precluded from arguing the Second Amendment. We can't even mention it during this case. And Dexter, I was able to say today that he's exercising his constitutional rights, and I got stopped. And so, this is the problem here in New York. You have this system that's just really angry and upset, and they treat this man, a great citizen, as a criminal because he's smart. He went to Stuyvesant High School, Johns Hopkins, and they can't have a guy like him that looks like him exercising his Second Amendment rights.
So that is the gist of the brother's case. And I'm just, I was just astounded by the fact that the judge was specifically say that the Second Amendment does not apply. To me, this woman has to be disbarred, man. Like, how is this not the Constitution? Look, I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I didn't even sleep at the Holiday Inn last night, but I can read, right? And let's go back. Hey, what up to Lord Bell? Let's go back and read. Let's go back and read the let's read the Bill of Rights again, because maybe I'm tripping. All right. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, this man legally bought parts for firearms. He assembled the firearms and he kept the firearms in his house. He did not shoot anyone with the firearms. He did not threaten anyone with the firearms. He didn't even go outside with the firearms. He didn't even take those firearms to the range. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had other firearms that he had purchased legally that he would go to the range with, but he didn't take the firearms that he actually assembled to the range. And yet the judge is going to tell him that this, the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which all the laws of the land spring from this document, the Constitution of the United States, she's going to tell him that he can't even, don't bring that in here. Look, man, this case is huge. And of course, once again, black people have to be the canary in the coal mine, because let's be real. In order for the forces that we talked about yesterday on yesterday's program to initiate the things that they want to initiate, and in order for groups like the World Economic Forum and indeed the World Health Organization, if they want to impose something, if you're going to impose something on America, you have to limit and infringe on people's Second Amendment rights. Because the reality of the situation is, at this current time, United States citizenry are the most armed people in the world. And if you try to impose something that is not in the Constitution on those people, and they wake up from this the slumber that it's not just black people, everybody's in a slumber right now. If those people wake up and they have their Second Amendment rights intact, you're going to have a problem. But if people sleep through this, and this man loses this case and he loses his Second Amendment rights, again, as black people are the ones being attacked, just like the Mulford Act way back in '68. And California, you got all these gun regulations in California, and the only people that got guns are seemingly the gangsters and the illegal immigrants, right? There's only people got guns in California. New York, you basically got the same thing. All these stringent gun laws, crime going through the roof, people from other places around the world coming in and going buck wild and throwing people all in front of the train and beating people up and smacking up cops and all types of stuff. And this man here minding his business. And I mean, they sent the SWAT team. They sent the SWAT team like this brother was I don't know, like some type of terrorist, like he was Osama bin Laden or something. So that's our big Second Amendment case. It's not the only one, but I thought that this was a perfect example of how the Second Amendment is under attack, where they're trying to set an example on this brother. So if he gets convicted, if you're in places like New York and California, especially, I mean, you don't have any chance, right? Now, we did First Amendment yesterday, covered Second Amendment today, and we're going to get to the Fourth Amendment now, right? But I said I wasn't going to be long, so let me pick up the pace. Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. What did it say? The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Now, you can make the argument that Mr. Taylor had his Fourth Amendment rights violated because, and I would have to look into the case further, How in the world did he come under surveillance for them to know that he had made the purchases when the purchase was legal? Now, let's stop right here, right? Because if he's making legal purchases for parts to firearms, the only way they can know is by having him under surveillance and having his data, which then would alert them to what he was purchasing and then would make them to be able to make a case against him. So let's go back and read the Fourth Amendment again, right? Because I mean, he's got not only does he have a Second Amendment issue, but his case is a Second Amendment issue and a Fourth Amendment issue. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. As I said yesterday, if you translate this into today's language, your papers and effects are your digital imprint, your data, and everything that's going in and out your computer. You have the right to be secure in that against unreasonable searches and seizures. This right shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon what? Probable cause. They have to have a reason to think you're doing something. And then they have to go before the judge and have to describe what is being searched and who is being searched and what is being seized, right? Now, I don't know if you all have ever been stopped by the police. And when they stop you, and if you ever been in a situation where they try to take and search something in your vehicle, right? Years ago, I was with some friends. We were pulled over. And it was late at night, they took us out the car. And one of the brothers I was with, he had a book bag and I had a book bag, and they were similar. And they started trying to search everything. And I was like, oh, wait a minute now. You do not have the right to search my property. And then the cop kind of looked at me and he paused and he didn't challenge me. Right? But unfortunately, my brother whose vehicle didn't have his paperwork in order. So he had some type of situation. I don't remember what it was. So they took him and we had to take his car. So, but my point in that is that, and this was a black cop, at least the black cop knew not to violate our rights by searching for anything in the vehicle. Because I didn't know what the brother had in the vehicle. So I'm like, nah, you can't search nothing. We do not consent to you searching anything, right? And he said the same thing. He's like, this is my vehicle. You can't search this. And I was like, and that's my property. You can't search that. So they had no probable cause to search. They really didn't even have a probable cause to stop us. But, anyway, black people in the car late at night, whatever. But my point being is that knowing the rudimentary basics of your rights can be beneficial in situations where at least the law enforcement officer isn't just completely corrupt. Now, if they completely corrupt, then it don't matter. You're just lucky to leave breathing and not be beaten over the head. But I just wanted to relay that incident because I remember that taking place. So now, greetings to Lee Clinton. And a real black gentleman said reasonable is a loaded term. Hey, brother, listen, you ain't lying. And Brother Dawood said, it's amazing that the NRA has remained silent on this case, even if the brother is the one on trial. Yeah, I don't know if they've taken a position. It's probably like you said, they probably have just ignored it. But I have seen some, what they call it, some 2A people, like some 2A pages and a couple of different groups. They've been spreading the message on this case. So while the NRA themselves haven't backed him up. I have seen different groups that believe in the Second Amendment back him up. Now, where was I? Okay. That was the Fourth Amendment. Now, let's go to what's currently going on with the Fourth Amendment. We have the reauthorization of the FISA statute. Now, which one is it? Which one gives me? All right, we'll deal with this one. We'll deal with unpacking the FISA Section 702 reauthorization bill, right? It says, as another sunset of Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA Section 702 authorities loom, the House of Representatives had passed a compromise bill, the Reforming Intelligence and Securing American Act, H.R. 7888, which the Senate is now considering. Oh, by the way, the bill has now passed, and I believe the president has signed. If he hasn't signed it, he will sign it. It's like there's no doubt about that. The bill would authorize Section 702, the controversial law that allows the U.S. government to acquire communications of non-Americans outside the United States without a warrant, and make a range of changes to FISA overall. It has something, y'all didn't even tell me that. One of the things sound different and I'm off. Let's back to the music. All right, there we go. Why does it sound so dead in here? My bad. Now, the bill would authorize Section 702, the controversial law that allows the U.S. government to acquire communications of non-Americans outside the United States without a warrant, and make a range of changes to FISA overall. It has something to interest everyone, from addressing the use of U.S. persons' query returns to formalize oversight measures to a technical expansion of the type of service provider that can be compelled to help the government to acquire communications. Stop right there. The government can compel your service provider, right? Your internet service provider, your phone company, all those people, all your telecommunications. They can compel them to give information on you, which maybe that's what happened to Mr. Taylor. Like, we still don't, that part I'm still blurry on as to how did they end up with the information to arrest him anyway, right? Now, it says the changes are a combination of direct responses to legislative gaps and real or perceived executive branch transgressions, codifying existing practices and updating FISA in ways that are evolutionary but not radical. Taken together, they appear to reflect deep dissatisfaction with how the executive branch has implemented aspects of FISA, paired with the recognition of the need to permit essential national security operations to continue under surveillance of all three branches of government. Now let's stop right here. Here's my problem with the whole FISA section in Section 702. And I do have a video where someone breaks it down further to what it is. Here's my issue. Anything you tell me about national security and that you're big on national security and how important national security is a lie based upon the fact that you won't secure the southern border. Let's think about this for a moment, right? If this act, which was passed in 1978, allows you to surveil people overseas for terrorist activity or criminal activity or whatever case may be, your southern neighbor, Mexico, has marauding gangs of drug dealers who bring in drugs, guns, people across the border, right? Have shootouts with the Mexican government, right? The Mexican government can't do nothing about it. And you're going to tell me that you need to surveil Americans to surveil non-Americans, but you won't even put up a strong fence. You're tearing down the fence that Texas put up. Come on, man. This is complete contradiction and absolutely ridiculous, right? So obviously, in reality, the goal of Section 702, which was beefed up with the Patriot Act and all that other stuff after 9/11, we talked about that in an earlier show, is not to surveil the people out there. What is it? To surveil, the people here. Now, somebody tell me I'm lying. Now, let me get back to it. Let's see. FISA in Section 702. FISA was enacted in 1978 largely as a means to impose a framework and limits on domestic national security surveillance. Such surveillance had grown in size, scope, and creativity over the preceding decades, and entities such as the Church Committee uncovered a stunning range of misguided and abusive activities. Let's start right there. Most of those misguided and abusive activities were part of the COINTELligence program, COINTELPRO of J. Edgar Hoover, and most of them were aimed at Black people who were fighting for freedom at the time. Just want to add that. It created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and empowered it to issue orders authorizing national security electronic surveillance upon a showing by the government that, among other things, the target of such surveillance is a foreign power or agent of a foreign power. Similar to applications for criminal search warrants, investigative targets are not represented in FISA proceedings. Informing criminal or national security subjects that they are being investigated is counterproductive. FISA also established the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court of Review, a court to which the government can appeal FISA orders or denials. For U.S. persons, U.S. citizens, or lawful permanent residents to be agents of a foreign power, their activity generally must implicate U.S. criminal laws. FISA has been amended multiple times, for example, to authorize the FISA to issue orders for national security physical searches and to establish a panel of amici to provide the FISA and FISCR with neutral support from experts from outside of the government. Now let's stop right here. It says that persons, U.S. citizens, can be labeled agents of a foreign power. But then it says their activity must implicate U.S. criminal laws. All right. Going back to yesterday. I saw somebody make this point and I thought about it. And you can make the argument, although you can't make it long because they're going to pass the law to say what I am about to say is anti-Semitism. Before the greetings to Raw, Ito Baita. You can make the argument that the ADL and AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, I think that's it, but y'all know what AIPAC is. We talk about it all the time. You can make the argument that they are agents of a foreign power. And yet, they've never come up before the FISA court to anyone's knowledge. Because they work strictly in the interests of Israel or Jewish people in general, whether here or abroad. And they basically bribe. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Well, we call it lobbying, but bribe, in other countries, is bribing. Here it's lobbying. They lobby our politicians to vote against the interests of the American people and vote to send billions of dollars overseas, while at the same time neglecting to secure the southern border or secure people that live here that are under, crime waves and all types of stuff that's going on, or stop the flow of fentanyl that's killing people, and all the other things that's going on. Stop the the human trafficking and the child sex trafficking trade that's going on, where every day somebody has another missing child posted up online saying that they can't find the child. Look, none of that stuff. None of that matters, right? We don't get any money for that. But the people that take our money and ship it out all over the place and pay our politicians to vote for these ridiculous laws and send money here, there, and everywhere are not, according to them, agents of a foreign power. I, however, say that argument could be made. Let's go back to the article. Now, says, whereas most FISA authorities require the government to make particularized showings to FISC and obtain specific orders to particular targets, Section 702 of FISA, which was added in 2008, in part as part of the FISA Amendment Act, is different. It targets non-U.S. persons who are outside the United States and authorizes the government to compel certain communications service providers within the United States to assist the government in acquiring those targets' communications. Such targets are not subject to the Fourth Amendment protection. As a result, rather than outline orders identifying and authorizing each target, under 702, the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence submit a certification to the FISC, which the FISC can authorize for up to a year. Stop. If you don't have to get particular orders to identify the person and to authorize each target, and simply have to put in to recertify to do what you've been doing for a year, I mean, to me, that just opens the way for all types of abuse. Am I tripping? I mean, is that correct? Or, I mean, y'all help me out. I just want to make sure I'm not on this island by myself. But to me, this sounds absolutely insane. Like, basically, the Fourth Amendment is thrown in the garbage. Now, says a certification, among other things, describes targeting procedures that the government will use to ensure that only non-U.S. persons outside the United States will be targeted. Minimization procedures the government will apply to its acquisition, retention, and dissemination of collected information, and as a recent addition, query procedures governing the use of U.S. person identifiers such as names, telephone numbers, and email addresses to search information has already been collected under Section 702. Although Section 702 prohibits reverse targeting, meaning collecting communications of an eligible target for the purpose of targeting a specific person within the United States, queries are run against that information that has already been collected. So what that means is that they can search the information that's been collected and then target a person within the United States. That's what the FBI has been doing, right? The Section 702 has a built-in sunset provision under which its authorities periodically expire. Not for the first time, the Congress enacted a brief extension of Section 702 in the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, at the end of 2023. Section 702 is now scheduled to expire on April 19th, unless it is extended. The sunset clause of Section 702, however, has a continuation provision that allows certification that's already in place to remain effective until their expiration date, even if the statute itself expires. Let's stop right there. Now, want to go here. Says warrant requirement for FBI 702 queries would impede investigations and endanger national security, the director says. Ray says requirement will hinder our ability to combat counter attacks and combat cyber attacks, excuse me. Now, let's stop right there. I'm gonna just be honest. How many times a week do we hear about a company being hacked and all the information being dumped? Even though the intelligent thing would be to have the highest level of encryption, but apparently that never happens. So, yeah, I mean, people really not really securing things the way they're supposed to anyway. So you saying that, oh well, if we can't, use this information that was low-key collected illegally, then we won't be able to stop cyber attacks. But if you have the proper security in place, proper encryption in place, and you have skilled people who are monitoring your network, you don't need to do illegal surveillance to protect the nation's infrastructure. And in reality, the nation's infrastructure is falling apart, as we see, because soon somebody bump into a bridge, the whole thing collapses. But anyway, I digress. The FBI surveillance authorities under the Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act are indispensable to the Bureau's efforts to combat threats from foreign adversaries, says Director Christopher Wray. But he said requiring the Bureau to obtain a warrant to query its database of information collected under Section 702 will hinder the FBI's ability to obtain and act upon threat intelligence and, by extension, to prevent potential terrorist or cyber facilitated attacks against the homeland. Let's stop right here. Here's my problem with what he's saying. He's saying he needs Section 702 in order to stop terrorist attacks. But he's not saying I need a moat and a drawbridge and a wall that's 50 feet high with barbed wire and some armed soldiers at the top of it to stop a gang of Chinese that's marching their way through the southern border up into America right now, although America is allegedly in a Cold War with China. It take all the time you need to process the information that I have just relayed. This is a complete contradiction. You can't, no one within the Biden administration can tell me that they seriously have any serious concerns about the security of the United States, and you won't secure your own border. It's cap. It's false. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's just a plain old fancy lie. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to play this video so we can just get a breakdown of the FISA amendment, how it came about, and what it's supposed to do, as we see, that we've been had on this one. That's all I can say.
The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISA Court, was established by Congress in 1978 to oversee the government's foreign intelligence surveillance. The reason it was established is that in the 1970s, the Church Committee had documented widespread surveillance abuses by the intelligence community within the United States. The compromise that Congress struck was to permit the government to continue to target legitimate foreign intelligence targets, but to subject that surveillance to oversight to prevent further abuses. Today, 40 years later, the FISA court sits in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., where it continues to issue surveillance orders at the request of the government. It is secretive by nature because the government often presents the court with extremely sensitive details about the individuals it wants to target or the technologies it wants to rely on. As originally designed by Congress, the FISA court was meant to hear individualized surveillance requests by the government. The FISA statute allows the government to go to the court when it believes it has probable cause to believe that a particular individual is an agent of a foreign power. And if the court agrees with the government that that individual is in fact an agent of a foreign power, then the court will approve surveillance of that person for a set duration of time. Today, the court hears about 1,000 to 2,000 of those individualized surveillance requests every year, and it approves the overwhelming majority of them. In the court's 40-year history, it has disapproved of about 40 of those requests, although the government points out that in many of the requests that it submits to the FISA court, it engages with a back-and-forth process of adjusting the request to comply with the court's demands. The FISA court was originally designed to oversee individualized surveillance requests, and for the first 25 years of its operation, that's exactly what it did. But in the years after 9/11, the government asked the court, and the court agreed to oversee large scales of bulk collection of Americans' information. In 2006, for example, the government asked the FISA court to approve the bulk collection of Americans' call records. Under that program, the NSA would, on an ongoing daily basis, collect the call records of Americans from the major telecommunications providers in the country. In 2015, Congress legislated to end the domestic mass surveillance programs that started after 9/11. But there's one critical exception, and that's Section 702 of FISA. Section 702 forbids the government from targeting known Americans or others inside the United States. Instead, the statute requires that the government target foreigners abroad, and it must be targeting those individuals to collect what the statute calls foreign intelligence information. That phrase is defined very broadly to include not just information about terrorists, but information about the foreign affairs of the United States. The primary complaint of privacy advocates about Section 702 is that in collecting that information, the government will predictably collect the information of many Americans. The primary protection that Section 702 provides to Americans is that it requires the government to comply with what are called minimization procedures. Those procedures are supposed to be designed to protect Americans' privacy when they're swept up in the surveillance. Once an American's communications are swept up under Section 702, they go into government databases, and there those communications can be searched for by the FBI, for example, in the course of criminal investigations. And so long as the government has an argument that accessing Americans' communications is necessary to understanding so-called foreign intelligence, the government can retain those communications and use them for many purposes. Critics of the court say that the mission of the court has crept over time to authorize increasingly broad surveillance that increasingly sweeps in the communications of Americans, all without any warrant. They also point out that much of the development of FISA court law happens behind closed doors, making effective oversight of the court difficult and making it difficult to assess whether the legal interpretations that the court is developing in secret are consistent with our laws. Proponents of the FISA court say that the court gives the government a secure forum in which to present sensitive information justifying important surveillance requests. They also say that the authorities that the FISA court oversees, like Section 702, give the government important surveillance authority in the context of its fight against international terrorism and other international threats.
Now, that if I actually remember where I got that from, and thank those people, put the link in the description. But that was a overview of what the FISA court is and what Section 702 does. And brother, real black gentleman saying that the intelligence community is trying and succeeding, I would add, to supersede the judiciary. Yeah, brother, without question, that is what is going on here, and been quite successful at it. Now here it says the importance of U.S. persons queries. According to Ray, U.S. persons queries are usually conducted in the early stages of an investigation when it is still too early to establish probable cause or demonstrate urgency. These queries can help the FBI connect the dots between bad actors and their intended targets, or between bad actors and their criminal networks, so the Bureau can prevent attacks before they happen. And since every second counts when you're racing to outpace a threat, any potential delay in obtaining threat intelligence can potentially cost lives. For example, in 2023, the FBI was able to prevent a potential attack on the U.S. critical infrastructure by a U.S. person who'd done relevant research and preparation, who'd been in touch with a foreign terrorist, Ray said. Only by querying the U.S. person's identifier in our 702 collection did we find important intelligence on the seriousness and urgency of the threat. Now let's start right here. So he's saying that the FBI was able to neutralize a threat based on the information they got from the 702 query. Maybe that happened. I have no reason to believe that that didn't happen. But what I want to do is show two cases of what happens when the government oversteps their bounds and how things can go awry. So I was supposed to talk about this case a long time ago, and I never got to. This is the case of the Newburgh 4. So let's see what we have. It says U.S. judge condemns the FBI while ordering the release of a man in the Newburgh 4 case. Says, and this is from January 20th, a man convicted in 2010 of plotting to blow up New York City synagogues and a Jewish community center and shoot down military planes was ordered to be released from prison by a judge who said the defendant was part of a group manipulated by who? The FBI. 4 men who became known as the Newburgh 4 were caught up in a scheme in 2009 to attack synagogues and community centers, launch Stinger missiles at military aircraft, driven by what the judge describes as overzealous FBI agents and an unsavory confidential informant. In other words, a snitch. Now, let's see. Hold on, Garmin. U.S. District Judge, Colleen McMahon had already ordered the other 3 men in the group, Ante Williams, David Williams, and LeGarrette Payen, to be released last July. The 4th man, James Cromity, described as the quote-unquote ringleader by the government, was ordered released by the judge on Friday. The judge called the case notorious and described the men as hapless petty criminals who were easily manipulated by the government to a sting operation. Cromity's lawyer was quoted in the New York Times as saying the judge's order was at least some kind of vindication for what we believe was a tragic miscarriage of justice. The 4 men were convicted of terrorism charges in 2010 and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Friday's order by the judge asked for Cromity's sentence to be cut to time served plus 90 days. It did not reverse the conviction. Judge McMahon said that Cromity was a small-time grifter who was broke and unemployed when he was enlisted by the FBI, enlisted in the FBI-driven plot and provided fake bombs to plant in exchange for $250,000 in the quote-unquote jihadist mission. Cromity enlisted 3 other men to serve as lookouts, according to the judge. The 3 men were recruited that Cromity could conspire with someone, the judge said. The real lead conspirator was the United States. The FBI invented the conspiracy, identified the targets, and manufactured the ordinance. Cromity was recruited by longtime FBI informant Shahid Hussein, whom the judge called a villain. The judge wrote that Hussein's role was to infiltrate mosques and spot people who could be potential extremists. Hussein offered heavenly and earthly rewards, including as much as $250,000 to Cromity if he would plan and participate in and find others to participate in a jihadist mission, according to the judge. Now, you see how this can get out of hand? I've been saying that I'm going to do a radical report on that because, if anybody actually remembers that case, because I remember it well. If you remember that case, put a 1 in the chat. Probably, I guess now because it's relevant, maybe this week I'll do a radical report on the whole entire case. Like, it goes back to 2009. The judge recently let them out. They were set up by the FBI. These were just some broke Muslim cats who was going to the masjid, and this dude came talking about money and Allah and so forth and so on. Next thing you know, you facing terrorism charges and looking around for the dude that was supposed to be the ringleader, and he's out of here. So I see a real black gentleman remembers. So that's one way that things can go left when things like the FISA amendment is abused. But I want to bring up one other thing from the past that people forget, right? Be before then, straight black pride to straight black saw. Brother Desaline says it sounds like entrapment. Oh, it was definitely entrapment, bro. So bring up this last thing, and then we will go back and deal with Biden signing the reauthorization, and then that'll be it. Let me say one thing too. I forgot, brother. Vincent Ali, send me an email if you're listening or you listen later on, because his brother sent me some money yesterday. Send me an email so I can send you the link for a couple of the lectures, because you have sent some money a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that. So just send me an email, and my email address is running along the bottom here. It's come up shortly. My Proton mail address, which is as I wait for it to come up, because I can't even remember, dc.radical_1@protonmail.com. So for that, brother, please send that email so I can send you those links, and you can download those lectures. Now, I want to go way back to the Obama administration. This was Anwar al-Awlaki, and he was an American citizen. He was, and we'll just read this article here. No, let's read this one. He was killed in a drone strike by the United States while Mr. Obama was president. And then his son was killed. His 16-year-old son was killed by the Obama administration, I think like the next year, right? Now, let's just read this real quick. It said a federal judge on Friday dismissed a lawsuit against the Obama administration officials for the 2011 drone strike killings of 3 U.S. citizens in Yemen, including a cleric that they say was connected to Al-Qaeda. We'll never know because he's dead. U.S. District Judge Rosemary Collier said the case raises serious constitutional issues and that it's not easy to answer, but that on these facts and under the circuit's precedent, the court will grant the Obama administration's requests. The suit against then Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, then CIA Director David Petraeus, and 2 commanders in the military's Special Operations Forces, permitting a lawsuit against individual officials under circumstances of this case would impermissibly draw the court into the heart of executive and military planning and deliberation, said Collier. She said the suit will require the court to examine national security policy and the military chain of command, as well as operational combat decisions regarding the designation of targets and how to best counter threats to the United States. The government has argued that the issue is best left to Congress and the executive branch, not judges, and that courts have recognized that the defense of the nation should be left to those political branches. U.S.-born Al-Qaeda leader, quote unquote, Anwar al-Awlaki and Samir Khan, an Al-Qaeda propagandist, were killed in a drone strike in September 2011. Al-Awlaki's 16-year-old son, Abdurrahman, was killed the following month. Now let's stop right here. let's say for the sake of argument that Mr. al-Awlaki was Al-Qaeda. Cool. It is what it is. You're at war with Al-Qaeda. Understood. What's the justification for killing a 16-year-old son? His son was never accused of being a terrorist. The United States government blew up a 16-year-old kid with no explanation, justification, and carried on as if nothing happened. I only bring it up because that's the slippery slope that, again, once you set the precedent in America, everything is based off precedent. So if the president of the United States has the ability to kill people, including 16-year-old kids, because he's the president of the United States, you know what I'm saying? Then again, his father is a U.S. citizen and he's a U.S. citizen. So this is the president of the United States basically waiting till someone goes overseas to kill them and then said that they are terrorists. What American citizen is safe under those type of rules? But all of this was justified under the FISA court and under the NDAA and under the Patriot Act. You see that I mean, it's a slippery slope to a cliff that's a bottomless well, right? So I just wanted to see if anybody remembered that, because we see how this government surveillance, how this throwing the Fourth Amendment in the trash can lead to you getting thrown in jail for 20 years for knowing some goofy Muslim dude, or being blown up because your father is allegedly Al-Qaeda. So let's get back to Mr. Biden signing the bill, because I don't think we read that. Let's go back. Got advertisements, we got all types of stuff. Somehow we're talking about Trump's VPs. Biden signs bill reauthorizing contentious FISA surveillance program. And I think this is CBS News. Says President Biden on Saturday signed legislation reauthorizing a key U.S. surveillance law after divisions over whether the FBI should be restricted from using the program to search for Americans' data nearly forced the statute to lapse. But after missing its midnight deadline, the Senate had approved the bill by a 60-34 vote hours earlier with bipartisan support, extending for 2 years the program known as Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Mr. Biden thanked congressional leaders for their work. In the nick of time, we are reauthorizing FISA right before it expires at midnight, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said when voting on the final passage began 15 minutes before the deadline. All day long, we persisted in trying to reach a breakthrough. In the end, we have succeeded. U.S. officials have said the surveillance tool, first authorized in 2008 and renewed several times since then, is crucial in disrupting terrorist attacks, cyber intrusions, and foreign espionage, and has also produced intelligence that the U.S. has relied on for specific operations, such as the 2022 killing of Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri. I thought that was before 2022. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. If you miss a key piece of intelligence, you may miss some event overseas or put our troops in harm's way, said Senator Marco Rubio, the top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee. You may miss a plot to harm the country here domestically or somewhere else. So in this particular case, there's real life implications. All right, let's stop right here. All that sounds good, and it makes sense on the surface. But again, if you're not going to secure the southern border, all that surveillance, I mean, the enemy's in your backyard. You surveilling over there, the enemy's walking in the back door over here. I mean, come on, man. Seriously. It's just a convenient excuse to attack and destroy our rights, which are barely implemented for us anyway. But let's go back and read the Fourth Amendment one more time before we get ready to get out of here. It says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons to be seized. But we see that because of the FISA Act, the National Security Agency and the CIA and all these people, they collect all this data, and then the FBI they come in and they search the data, and then they use that to target people, therefore bypassing what? Bypassing the unlawful and unreasonable search and seizures, and bypassing the use of warrants, and bypassing probable cause. So to me, the whole program, once the FBI gets involved, it was suspect from the jump. But with the FBI getting their data from CIA, NSA, and all these people, and then using that to target Americans, that's just I don't understand how that's not a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. Again, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but anybody sees this and they want to communicate with me and give me an explanation of how this is not a violation of our rights, hey, I'm all ears. So as we have seen over the last 2 days, the First Amendment is without question under severe attack. We've seen that the Second Amendment is under severe attack, and as usual, there's black people involved when that's under attack. And we see that the Fourth Amendment at this point is just a joke when it comes to, all they have to do is say national security and terrorism, and then all of a sudden everybody, starts running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and your rights are thrown right out the window. So with that, brothers and sisters, that covers our discussion on the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments. It took us 2 days. I think now anyone who watches this understands the importance of standing up and fighting this onslaught of the destruction of the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights that's currently taking place. Because once certain laws are passed and you no longer have your First Amendment and your Second Amendment, none of the rest of this stuff matters, right? So do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe. Spread this message, spread this information, tie people down and make them watch, at least make them watch yesterday's, right? and help wake people up. I don't care who they are, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. If they're an American citizen, they know some American citizens, because here's the reality situation, right? Sad as it is to say, it pains me to say this, but in the current situation that we're facing, if America completely falls to tyranny, the power of America will be used to extend that tyranny around the world, and things will be even worse than they are now, which I know seems inconceivable, but one thing I've learned in my lifetime, things can always get worse. Things can get better with effort, but things can always get worse, right? Where if you just let them, if you let things happen, they always get worse. And Brother Dessalines says they seem to know how asleep the people are as they casually remove our rights. Yeah, brother, some of these things are so bold that you have to make the assumption that people are asleep. And Brother You Got Rid Off says the white nationalists aren't even connecting the dots because it's happening to drum roll. Hold on. Let me put both these up. They seem to know how asleep the people are. They casually remove our rights. And then brother says white nationalists aren't even connecting the dots because it's happening to black people, right? Again, like I said before, we're the canary in the coal mine. And when the canary kills over, you have to understand that the mine is dangerous, right? It's the reality of the situation. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you would like to donate, you can donate via Cash App, $DC Radical 1. You can email me, dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1. And at Twitter, you can follow me at DC_ONE. With that, brothers and sisters, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This has been your brother DC Radical 1. With that, I say a BB for ODA and straight black. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cash App is $DC Radical 1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A BB for ODA and straight black pride.